Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the December 11th, 2019 Cape Fear Public Utility Authority Board meeting to order. And the first thing we need on our agenda is the determination of a quorum. And I need a motion to excuse Ms. Cusack and Ms. Adams today.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we will move to the adoption of our agenda. Agenda is before you.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approval of the minutes.
Minutes of November meeting are in your packet, and I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. First thing, next on our agenda is a presentation, and I'll ask Ms. Lindsay Halleck, our Director of Public and Environmental Policy, to make that presentation.
Good morning. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about was our plug-in hybrid electric vehicle pilot program. And this initiative is coming out of the Sustainability Committee, and that's the new committee that was recently formed. The committee is looking at a lot of different projects, from recycling to source water protection, also looking at our biosolids disposal program. And a lot of these programs are really designed to help us reduce our carbon footprint or reduce our impact on the environment. But the one program that I wanted to talk about today is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle pilot, and just kind of talk to you guys about some of the research we've been doing on the program when we're exploring whether or not these cars could be integrated further into our fleet. So this year we purchased a Kia Niro plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. It's the first electric vehicle that we've purchased for the CFPUA fleet. It's being used in the water sampling division, which is out of the Environmental Management Department. And we wanted to kind of ask ourselves, okay, how does this vehicle compare to the other cars that we have in the fleet when it comes to cost and greenhouse gas emissions? So we compared it to a 2019 Ford Escape. That would be the car that would have been a likely contender for doing that same role in the water sampling division, but it wouldn't be electric. It would be the gas-run vehicle. So when we looked at the cost comparison, the initial purchase price was a little bit more expensive. The plug-in hybrid was about $5,000 more. But what we found is that over time, the price comes together, and that really happens because of the reduced cost of electricity and of charging the vehicle. So basically, the plug-in hybrid is so much more efficient in fuel that over time, the cars are only about $600 difference in cost because we're just not buying as much gas, and when we charge it, that's cheaper than using gas. So at the end, what we estimate is that the plug-in hybrid will be about $600 more over the lifetime of the vehicle. When we look at fuel efficiency, the Ford Escape is about 26 miles per gallon, and the Kia Niro, when it's in gasoline mode, is about 46 miles per gallon. So when it's in gas mode, it's already more efficient. But when you cycle in the time that it spends on the electric charge, what we're seeing is on average, it gets up to about 83 miles per gallon. So that's kind of what we're seeing with the staff driving it so far. And so it's just a lot more fuel efficient, and that's where a lot of the savings are coming from. One of the most important things we wanted to do was to try to understand what kind of savings are we getting on greenhouse gas emissions. And, it's a plug-in hybrid, so it does use gas. And we didn't really know what we were going to find. We wanted to explore and see, okay, how much savings are we really getting, and is it worth the cost difference? So what we did was we looked at a variety of emission sources. We considered the emissions that come from manufacturing the vehicle. We considered the emissions that come from charging the vehicle. So when it's actually plugged into the grid, what are the emissions that we're getting from that source? We looked at what the emissions are from when it's in gas mode, from actually taking the oil out of the ground, delivering it to the gas station, so well-to-pump emissions. And then we also considered emissions for actually driving the vehicle, so the tailpipe emissions. And what we found is that with the plug-in hybrid, it's actually a 51% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And this is an estimate still. We just got the car, so we're going to be following up on these numbers as time goes by. But as an initial estimate, it was really exciting to see that just by switching over to a plug-in hybrid, we could get that amount of savings. And so What we're going to be doing next is we're going to be watching the electric vehicle market to see if new technologies are coming in, if new vehicle types are coming in, and that would make it more likely that we could bring electric vehicles into other parts of the fleet. We're also going to continue to collect feedback on the driver experience. So like I said, this car is being driven in the water sampling division, and we've reached out to staff a couple of times and asked, how does this compare to other vehicles that you drive? Do you like driving it? What are there any surprises? Are there any challenges that we need to overcome? So we're going to continue doing that. And then I'm also working with Carl on making a kind of decision-making protocol for staff. So as new vehicles are either age out of the fleet or maybe we consider purchasing a new vehicle, we'll work with staff to encourage the selection of electric vehicles when it's possible, when it's practical. So those are kind of the next steps in the program, and hopefully we'll be able to find other places to bring electric vehicles in and continue to see emissions reductions throughout the fleet. And that's really all I had. This is a methodology, just some of the assumptions that we made when we were doing the emissions calculation, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Kevin?
Have we looked into the Volkswagen settlement?
Yes, actually, and so the Volkswagen said basically there's a possibility that money would be coming out of that and could be used for grant funding for buying, I think it's cars, but also infrastructure for charging stations.
Yeah, charging stations and vehicles. The city is buying 2 or 3 garbage trucks.
Oh wow, that's
And
awesome.
they'll be provided fast charging stations for each one of them if we're successful.
Yeah, and I know I had looked into that, and I know one of the complications was that I think the grant funding is only available for local government, and so I think with like pass-through funding or something we have to explore. I think it was like actually laid out that it was for city or counties only, but it is something that that we were.
It may be late too. I think the process is pretty far along.
Okay.
But I know the city has a grant application in.
Great.
I think Wave has one in as well.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll look into that and see if we qualify for that.
Yes, sir.
Lindsay, thanks for the report. It's terrific. Charging stations. The plan going forward, how do we currently charge, and do we have a overall strategy on, placing charging stations, say, around the county, or what's your thinking on that?
So one of the nice things about starting this pilot in the water sampling division is that it would be extremely unusual for this car to have to be kind of used in the middle of the night. They work on a very regular schedule, and that's usually from 8 to 5, let's say. So the car is able to kind of use the slow charger, so it just charges overnight. And right now this car is just plugged right into an external outlet at the EMD facility. If we wanted to start, kind of really bringing more electric vehicles into other parts of the, organization, it would be possible that we might have to start thinking about faster chargers where they could charge in just a few hours. This one takes about 6 hours. And if that's the case, that kind of does increase the cost, because right now, essentially the charging infrastructure comes with the car and we didn't have to do anything extra. And so there are now like level 2 charges and even level 3 where the car could charge in 30 minutes, but those are more expensive. And so that's something I think we just have to look at on a case-by-case basis.
And do any of the vehicles you're looking at include pickups, light pickups?
They are starting to come out with EV trucks out onto the market. And I think actually this was one of the first years where they came out with one. So I think we'll certainly kind of be monitoring how people are, reviewing those cars and what their experience is. And then as, new vehicles come up in the fleet to be replaced, it's something we can look into.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is maintenance on these vehicles, and I know we don't have a history of it, but is it maintenance fairly common? I mean, is it kind of almost like the same type of maintenance you would do on strictly gas vehicles? I mean, is there any unusual upkeep on these electric vehicles? I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, that's something we're going to look at over the life of the pilot. I didn't include maintenance costs in this sort of cost estimate right now, and that's because when I talked with Kevin Boyette, who's really in charge of our fleet, he was saying, based on what he's read and researched, he doesn't really expect to be the maintenance cost to be anything more than what we would experience with any other vehicle. But that is something that, as part of the pilot, we'll monitor and check in case that happens. And we keep all of that in Maximo, so it's really easy to follow.
Yes, sir.
My experience, at least with hybrids, is that there's no more maintenance. I mean, you're doing oil changes for the gas engine, and there's no maintenance of the electric system at all. I've had one for a long time.
So they never fail.
The battery could fail. I mean, there's a battery, and I've never had one fail.
And there are.
But I know someone who did.
Or
And
the
it's pretty
batteries,
expensive to
are
replace.
the kind of batteries, are they terribly expensive to kind?
They're
Or?
pretty expensive
Yeah.
batteries, like $800 batteries.
Yeah.
But I know somebody who knows where you can get a rebuilt one, cheaper.
In general, maintenance is less expensive for electric vehicles in general. I'm looking for stats for you exactly, but
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not looking for stats. I just, I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true.
it is.
Well, you
Well,
still,
almost.
again, on a hybrid, you still gotta maintain the
Right.
gas engine.
Sure.
Oil changes, all that. But,
But
I've
the electric
never
part
had
is-
any work done for the electric system, other than the starter battery failing, which would happen in a gas car.
And especially with these types of cars, I mean, when we start talking about trucks, that's a really new sort of product on the electric vehicle market. But when it comes to smaller SUVs and sedans, they've been in the market for so long. And I think a lot of the, manufacturers have worked out a lot of the problems that they saw in the beginning. So hopefully, we won't experience any problems, but that's really the point of the pilot. And so we'll just kind of keep reporting on it regularly.
Good.
Lindsay, I remember from your original report at the sustainability, we will always at CFPUA have a need for off-road and heavy-duty trucks that are traditional gas. At least in the near future, we're not talking about electrical vehicles for large maintenance trucks, correct?
Right, and that's really the purpose of the protocol is, it'll kind of be a nice, like a question sheet, so staff can walk through each question and say, okay, do I need this for this role? What do I need? And really to help us decide, is it really appropriate to be using an electric vehicle, or do we need to wait until the market kind of meets that demand? And so that way we're doing it in a really smart and organized way and allowing, making sure that we're not experiencing any problems by moving too fast.
Any more questions for Lindsay? All right, Lindsay, thank you so much for that presentation.
Yeah.
Plowing some new ground here, and I like it. All right, that brings us to our public comments. Ms. Pope, do we have any speakers this morning?
I don't think so, but I'll check. No, sorry.
All right, thank you very much. And now our consent agenda. We have 8 items on our consent agenda this morning.
I'd like to pull number 2 for some questions.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve our consent agenda with the exception of number 2?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Kevin, number 2.
Sole source. That always gets my hair up on the back of my neck. Tell me why this chemical company is so unique that chemicals we've been using since the 90s, there's no other source for them? We can't get any bids?
I think Carl's going to respond to that.
So this particular item had 3 sole source chemicals. I can address each one of them if that's okay, or is there a particular one?
I don't understand why
So
we don't put it out to bid.
So on the first one, that is our coagulant 8 polymer at the Sweeney plant to treat the Cape Fear River water. We have done various vendors have come in the past to see if their product can perform as well as the product that we have been using for a number of years. And they have not been able to demonstrate that their products can perform as well as the chemical that we have been using. So that's the reason why we continue to recommend a sole source until there is somebody that comes along that can demonstrate that their product works better.
So that's true on all of these? There's a performance reason?
There's a performance reason, and I think that's certainly true on the first 2. The last one, that is a new chemical and that's a little bit of a, because we're transitioning on our biosolids dewatering at the wastewater treatment plants. We're transitioning from a contract operation to our staff operating that. So this would be our first year using that chemical. We had chemical vendors come in and demonstrate to see how their performance was. At least on this first year, it showed that the chemical that our contract operator was using was performing the best. So for an easy transition and continuity, we wanted to use that for this first year, but we'll continue to look at that during the course of the year.
With that, I'll move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that takes care of our consent agenda. Now we'll move on to our new business, administrative reports, and Ms. Miles, our attorney's report.
I don't have anything, but I do need to go into closed session for just 5 minutes to discuss CFPUA versus Chemours and DuPont.
All right. Thank you. We'll move that obviously to the end of our meeting. Executive Director's report.
Thank you. Yesterday we had the ribbon cutting for the 421 Water and Sewer Project. Several board members were there, staff members. Just like to recognize the city's contribution to that project, the county's contribution, and certainly the CFPUA contribution to make that happen. Projects that complex and that difficult really transcend one organization, so we certainly appreciate all the cooperation among the agencies to get that project to happen. You also find the key indicators report, the environmental report, safety report, and the customer service update in your packet. And if there are questions on any of those items, staff is here. Be glad to answer them.
Jim, I'm curious, I've been trying to track this over the last few months, the amount of water that we rely on Lower Cape Fear water and sewer in our overall water, our raw water supply. Do you have that breakdown? Is that a part of this? I'm just not seeing it, or do you know what that is?
Don't know if that's in the report. Typically, we draw 10 million gallons per day average across the year, and that fluctuates as lines are down for maintenance and repairs. And seasonal demands as well. Carl, do you have any more information on that, or can we provide that later in the week?
We can provide it later. It is not captured in that particular report, Mr. Zappel, but we can provide that.
Yeah, sure. Averaging around 10 million gallons a day.
Across the year, right?
Yeah. One other question too. I noticed in the development services there that we see a drop in the permits, request for permits, and also for the request for information. Both are significantly down in this month. Is anyone here that can speak to a trend, or is this a one-off, or is this a seasonal thing?
On the building permits, Mr. Zappel, when we compared that to this year in 2018, in 2018 that had an impact from Hurricane Florence. If you recall, that happened in September, and then during the September-October timeframe, there was not a lot of building permits being drawn at the time. So there was a large influx in November of 18. And then when we compare that to November of 2019, it appears there's a big drop. But it's there was a little anomaly in that. The other thing I can say is that typically in the November-December timeframe, with respect to the request for information and building permits, the industry tends to slow down a little bit, and that is reflective in the numbers as well.
Hurricanes, seasonal.
Yes, sir.
Good, thanks.
Okay. Not a question, but I just want to, for those watching at home, they're probably not seeing this, our sanitary sewer overflow figures are remarkable again, after being high for a long time because we use a rolling average after Florence. Now we are not only well below the industry average, we're below our own target, which is a terrific result and something we need to make sure the public knows about.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I think we also need to highlight the safety report. It's been several months running with a very excellent safety report. And we're all glad to see that all the employees are going home at night in as good or better shape than they did, than they started working. So, excellent.
That's always a blessing.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our committee reports. Executive Committee met on December 4th, and the minutes are in your packets for your review. We do have one action item, a resolution. It's our 2020 meeting calendar. We didn't have this available for Executive Committee, and this needs to come to the board for approval.
Move to approve? You're looking for a motion?
I am.
Yeah, move to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll do that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That brings us to Finance Committee.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I had a question on the Executive Committee meeting minutes. I noted that we're taking a look at the Wrightsville Beach agreement, interlocal agreement, and that from the minutes I read, it looks like we've exceeded, or they've exceeded the 45 million gallons. I was wondering, in the new amendment, I remember there was a robust discussion about the cost per gallon in that interlocal agreement. Was there discussion in the Executive Committee about that, and what's the plan going forward?
Sure. Well, we're viewing the consumption on a calendar year basis, so they likely won't exceed what's contemplated in the ILA in this calendar year. And we're reaching out to the town to help understand what their projections are for next calendar year, so that if they do want additional water, there's time to renegotiate the ILA. And if they don't need additional water, there's time for them to manage that throughout the calendar year. So
We're getting to a major break point here where they need to come on as a permanent, or the kind of special agreement that we jumped into this agreement with is, what's the time frame on that? When will that end?
I believe that was a 3-year agreement
Right.
that we entered into last spring, and it contemplated, I believe, 45 million gallons in a year. And we just need to understand what the town's plan is heading into next calendar year. If they plan on using our water early in the year, then they may have trouble meeting that target. If they rely more on their wells, I'm sure they won't have a problem at all. So we just want to have that discussion with the town.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. Any more questions? All right. Now the Finance Committee, in Ms. Adams' absence, the minutes from our December 4th meeting are in your packets, and I'll ask McLean to present our monthly financial report.
Would you interpret that as?
Morning.
Per gallon? The same. Can't figure it out.
So 4 months through the year, as of the end of October, our expenditures have exceeded our revenues by about $3.4 million. That's driven largely by the operating side over here, and that's attributable to a couple of things. We've been talking for a couple of months. We have this large debt service payment that becomes due in August, and it takes some time for revenues to kind of catch up for that large payment. The other thing as well is the amount of money that's been spun off from the operating fund to fund the capital expenditures over here. You can see it's about $9.9 million through the first 4 months of this year. Just to kind of give you an idea, compared to last year, that same number was $5.4 million. So our capital program is spending at an increased rate, compared to last year. Again, this number is capped. It's capped at $18 million. Well, the original budget was 16.5, and we've slowly been building that back up to that $18 million. So this is just kind of a timing thing there. That brings our total unrestricted fund balance to about $86.5 million. Everything's looking good there. As far as our rate revenue variance analysis, you can see in terms of ERUs, we're kind of right there, slightly above on the water side, slightly below on the sewer side. That's kind of contributing to a marginal or kind of a nominal increase compared to where we thought we would be in terms of the fixed charges, and just slightly below here on the wastewater side. In terms of the volumetric, you can see that we're way up. So this is through 5 months of this fiscal year, and we're about $1.8 million ahead of where we thought we'd be at this point in the year on the water side, and about $1 million ahead on the wastewater side, and that's because of this consumption per ERU, right here on both those sides. Still seeing that continued trend of consumption being up. This is kind of our 3-year trend analysis of our growth in our ERUs. You can see that's kind of trending up. It kind of took a dip in the last couple of months. There were some timing anomalies there that was due to the hurricane, but we've kind of caught back up to where we should be. And again, this is how that rolling average bi-monthly water and sewer usage per ERU looks. Again, you can see that tick up that happened in late spring, early summer of this past year. And again, the water slope, you can see that it's a little steeper than the sewer right here, and that's because we think because of the separately metered irrigation usage there. PFAS related expenditures, you can see it's about $8.8 million that's been spent so far. The encumbered amount, this looks a lot higher compared to previous months, but this incorporates what we've encumbered for the construction for the Sweeney enhancements. So you can continue to see this total go up and up and up as that project gets underway. In terms of our other revenue sources, so we already talked about the water and the wastewater side. Seeing a little bit of a lag here on the investment earnings. We're in a falling rate environment. We've seen a lot of volatility, so we're just kind of a little below where we thought we'd be. In terms of the SDCs, still looking good there. We've kind of been trying to predict maybe when the development would kind of slow down here, but we've not really seen that, and that's reflected here. So we're 5 months through the year, and we're already at almost 70% of what we budgeted in terms of the SDCs. And in terms of the other revenues, we're right on track. Those are our fines and penalties and other fees and those types of things. So everything's looking good on the revenue side. And that is it. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about SDCs. I seem to remember last year we went out and advertised the proposal, and then as we got near the budget, there was some discussion about trying to change it a little bit, but we couldn't because we had advertised it. So when are we going to start that process this year?
Right. So we need to advertise, I believe, by March 1st to kind of coincide with the timing with the rest of the budget and everything. I believe the statutes require a 45-day window to put that out there. So I think we've been putting that out there by March 1st. So so what you're referring to is...
So we should see it before that, so that we can...
That's exactly right. We normally bring it in February, kind of lay out those assumptions. So, and it was particularly, I think, around the number of ERUs, where, we kind of towards the latter half of last year, we saw the ERUs increase, but we kind of locked those in for that calculation based on what we saw in January, February timeframe. So we could have that same type of thing happen this year as well.
John, based on what you're seeing right now, what is your instinct? I'm not going to ask you for a recommendation, but for the SDC level, have you drawn any conclusions based on the robust numbers that you're showing us?
Well, I'll say that the trend, one of the big, kind of impacts of the financial policy changes that we've done and PAYGO funding more, that means that ratepayers are funding more of the system. And so what that means is that buy-in goes up for future customers. So I think in general, the SDC should continue to go up and up and up. That could be offset to some extent through growth, and ERUs, that cost is kind of being spread out more. But I would say overall, the SDC that we're going to propose for next fiscal year is likely going to be higher than the SDC that's currently in place, just based on the parameters that are in policy for how it's calculated. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Well,
Yes, sir.
could you flip back to the usage per ERU? Maybe one more to see the,
This right here?
yes, so we're still, well, we don't have that in figures, that our consumption's going up per ERU, and that's, I guess, for you, that's a good thing. And for our operating people, that's not as good because we're using a lot more water capacity than, which means we'll have to upgrade things. So I think we need to keep an eye on that trend and see whether we can, it was a nice downward trend for, 2 years, I think, where people were being more conservation minded with their water usage, but now that's tending to go up, and that will cause over time, that'll mean that we have to upgrade facilities sooner.
And that's absolutely correct, and a lot of what we've seen is irrigation demands, especially last summer, pushed the consumption per ERU up. Even on the wastewater side, because not everyone has an irrigation meter, so a lot of irrigation flow would have been built for sewer. That is one of our topics for the retreat, is what are our options to try to manage our irrigation demands over time, because obviously we don't want irrigation triggering a plant expansion. It's a very expensive way to irrigate plants and grass.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something we're looking at and something we'll be talking about at the retreat in January.
Okay.
Following up on that thought, it eventually means we need more water all the way around. And so part of that discussion at the retreat, IBTs, interbasin transfers, which will have an impact, a long-range impact as well. Will that be a part of the discussion?
We will certainly look at IBTs and see if that's going to affect our water supply. We're right now focused on what are the demands on our system and how do we manage those in terms of preserving our plant capacity and getting the most number of customers that we can with the current infrastructure that we have.
And any discussion as well about the lock and dam number 1 and the maintenance issues surrounding that in the future of that?
Absolutely, and we have been tracking that. The Corps of Engineers obviously has put a few things out about that recently, and we all have a vested interest in making sure lock and dam number 1 stays in its current position and does its job. So we are concerned about that, and we'll be working with our regional partners on that issue.
Great a discussion point at the retreat.
We can certainly bring that in as an update.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Any more questions? All right, John, thank you very much. Move on to Communications Committee. Ms. Cusack is not here to report. Kevin, anything you need to add?
We had a meeting. Are there any minutes? I can't remember.
Yeah, there are minutes.
Well, the minutes are in the packet. You surprised me. I didn't know I was second.
I did.
I didn't know I was second in command.
Now you do.
And we will move to our Sustainability Committee. And Jessica.
Yes, so we met on the 21st. The minutes are in the packets. Thank you, Lindsay, for that presentation. A bulk of what we talked about that day, among other things, was the electric vehicle pilot program. I'll just add that I think we should recognize Lindsay and the energy team for being very proactive on this. The electric vehicle market is definitely at an inflection point. And I think we're going to be very well positioned to both save our ratepayers money and to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. We're developing a really good in-house fund of knowledge on this, and I think it's going to mean a lot to our ratepayers moving forward. So thanks again, Lindsay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that brings us really to the end of our regular agenda. Any old business? All right. I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you very much.